Welcome back to another episode of A Mental Health Break with Vincent A. Lanci. I'm excited to launch another episode for you all. I'm Vincent Lanci, speaker and author of the book Left for Dead, A Story of Redemption. When I was 21 years old, I was the victim of a hit-and-run accident while walking home from a friend's birthday. After coming out of a coma and suffering from a traumatic brain injury, or you may know of as a TBI, I soon realized that it was time to put my mental health on a very high pedestal. This transformative experience has led me to create a podcast that is all things mental health. Would it benefit you to hear from mental health professionals and influencers? Would it also add value to your life to hear real life and authentic stories from people talking about their mental health, the issues they face, and how they actively combat them? If you answered yes to any of those questions, you came to the right place, and I want to start by congratulating you for making your mental health a priority. If you missed the last episode, be sure to download it after you tune in today. On this episode, I am happy to introduce my guest, Dr. Carlos Garcia. Dr. Garcia served 8 years in the United States Marine Corps. After his service in the military, he spent another 8 years working as a firefighter and paramedic for the St. Lucie County Fire Rescue. He proceeded to earn his doctorate degree in clinical psychology and completed his residency at Rutgers University. He is the founder of the Mastery Group, where he helps others reach their full potential and is also doing his part to help the transition out of the military for service men and women with the organization, helping out our American heroes. There is much more to learn, and I could go on for a while, but I will now introduce Dr. Carlos Garcia. Carlos, thanks for coming on my show.
Hey, Vincent, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, man. I'm really looking forward to this combo.
Absolutely, me as well. Would you mind please previewing your story and introducing yourself to our listeners, and then also sharing your role relating to mental health?
Absolutely. So I currently work as a licensed clinical psychologist in the Tampa Bay area. And in my practice, I see clients who are, at the core of everything struggling. So it can look like depression, it can look like anxiety and many other different things, maybe suffering from self-esteem or motivation issues. So I've been doing that for several years. And then, sort of the Mastery Group, what I found is that there's so many overlaps when it comes to mental health counseling, but also sort of just like coaching, right? Coaching people or business owners, entrepreneurs on, what are our mental and emotional blocks, right? Because we all have them. We can't escape them. And teaching people how those things can impact everything from our relationships to the way we do our work, to the way we run a business, to, everything, right? And I'm also a speaker, and one of the, the things that's sort of my goal is, the message and a lot of the core fundamental principles and ideas that I discuss in therapy, sort of bringing those to the mass population, right? Because there's so much stigma around mental health and people thinking that, there must be something wrong with me if I'm going to go see a therapist. And I'm all about, breaking that message. So that's partly how I'm involved in mental health. I would say the other part, and this is, probably uncommon for a lot of therapists, is my own journey with mental health, which has been, over 20 something years of either being in therapy myself, what I call bibliotherapy, so learning about myself, and some of the things that I've struggled with in the past of depression and anxiety. So, coming at it from both aspects, I think puts me in a good position to talk to people about mental health, its value, its importance, and some of those other factors.
Well, I appreciate you coming on again, and it's always great when I can have people speak on their personal and professional, because it comes up a lot, because it's true, the perspectives people can gain, you never know where that piece of advice you need is going to come from. So thank you again for coming on.
Thank you. Exactly. I totally agree with that.
And we're going to break down a lot of stigmas together, my man. Since we're both in the Tampa area, we might be doing some more work together, because there's a lot of stigmas we need to take care of. But on each episode, I share a mental health story of someone who is famous, because I want to let you, the listeners, know that you are not alone. I want you to understand that even though someone looks like they are healthy from the outside, they may not be on the inside too. And today I will introduce the story of star actor Wentworth Miller. And I was a big fan of his during when the Prison Break show was on, and I had no idea about this stuff, so I really found it interesting. And it had a lot of quotes in this article, which I think is very important. And the first one being, in 2010, semi-retired from acting, I was keeping a low profile for a number of reasons. First and foremost, I was suicidal. And he wrote this in a post online, and he explains that, through a matter now he's comfortable about speaking, but at the time he suffered in silence and depression like many others. So I thought that was very important to include. The next, he said he considered himself damaged goods. I've struggled with depression since childhood. It's a battle that's cost me time, opportunities, relationships, and 1,000 sleepless nights. In 2010, he said he was looking to numb the pain in any way that could be, ranging from sex, alcohol, food, or drugs. And then in 2013, he actually came out, and then he turned down an opportunity to appear at Russia's film festival because of the country's anti-gay laws. So he had a lot going on with his mental health, and the article concluded with sharing his previous suicide attempt while speaking at a Human Rights Commission event. Dr. Garcia, what do you take away from someone in this role with sharing these problems?
Yeah, well, first thing, how brave and courageous to share that, right?
Right.
Which can be, extremely tough for us when we're struggling to want to admit that even to ourselves, much less to others. I think that the part that, the quote that most stands out to me is about feeling like damaged goods. Vincent, you have no idea, just how many of my clients, if not all, I'm willing to say, come in feeling that way. And I think it has to do with several factors. One is sort of our culture's view, again, on mental health, right? And our misunderstanding and lack of education around what depression actually is, how it comes about, and anxiety as well. Those are the two biggest sort of things that I see in my office. And one of the biggest problems is when someone's struggling, we tend to, and I think coming from a good place, we want to help. But sometimes the things we say can do more damage than good, right? So sort of like, why are you sad? There's so many good things in your life. Or, maybe you just need to change your mindset and be more positive. Or these things that we think that are helpful are truly, what they're really doing is minimizing the person's experience. Sort of saying, you shouldn't be feeling that way. And what's wrong with you for struggling? And sometimes we get this message from early on, right? Teenagers are just very emotional around that time. And some of us are just more emotional than others, right? I can see a sort of, happy commercial, those Publix commercials always get me. I get sentimental. I get sort of teary-eyed, right? And I'm not afraid to admit that anymore, especially as a man. And we can get into that whole, toxic male thing. But anyway, the point is that we start hearing a message early on of it's not okay to be sad. It's not okay to be angry. It's not okay to express your emotions or feelings. And no wonder we grow up and all we try to do is sort of repress those feelings in ourselves or feel a sense of shame or guilt for having them.
You're 100% right. And even I think it was Kevin Love I did the insight on, and he said his dad always told him to suppress those feelings and muster those feelings. And it can only do more harm. So thanks for a great response to that. That was extremely helpful advice for all of our listeners. And it's a perfect entrance to our main event. On each episode, Dr. Garcia, my guest and I will go over this series of 6 questions, which slightly varies just depending on if my guest is licensed or not. And you are, and we have some personal experience. So I'm ready to deliver as much value as possible. You ready to go?
I'm ready, man. Let's do it.
Great. So you may have just previewed this a bit, but many would agree that the more common or talked about types of mental illnesses are mood disorders, anxiety disorders, or schizophrenia disorders. What areas do we come across the most?
Well, in my practice, and I think, depending on the area of practice for some psychologists and the setting that they work in, they might see, someone with, OCD, whether severe or a less severe case, schizophrenia, things like that, bipolar disorder. Most of the clients I see are struggling with depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, some of those things. But also a lot of them, whether, and this is sort of, different ways to look at it, is the depression and anxiety causing the interpersonal issues or the self-esteem issues, or is it the other way around? And that's something I'd like to sort of tease apart and get into and have my clients gain a little bit of insight around. My perspective is that there are certain mental disorders that are uh, biologically based, chemically based, and for instance, bipolar disorder, you can't talk yourself out of a manic episode or sort of the chemical imbalance, right? Same thing with schizophrenia and some other mental health disorders. My experience and what I mostly work with are people that are experiencing depression and anxiety because of some deep core belief or a faulty core belief about the world outside of them and mostly themselves, right? Back to this I'm broken, something's wrong with me type thing. In those instances, I believe that talk therapy is the most helpful because we're not just I'm not about just giving them strategies or solutions on how to, just get better. I'm taking them on this profound journey to figure themselves out, to understand themselves from a level that most people don't expect, right? I always get this thing in here of like, oh my God, I never knew that about myself. I'm like, yeah, why would you? Why would you bother to ask these questions, right? You've just known you're normal. And with some of those things, I think people are able to get past the depression and anxiety with just talk therapy and a deeper level of understanding about themselves. It's a powerful, powerful, transformative process.
I can agree with that completely. I think the power of therapy is something that I should have been in a long time ago when I was too ignorant to accept that, hey, this could actually do benefits. But I like the way you put there where if you're not feeling yourself, because that's what I've heard from a lot of professionals, break it down. Do you feel, is your sleep affected? Is your appetite affected? Are things not the right way? That should just trigger something. If you aren't feeling right, you're not feeling right.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I think that's a perfect indicator, right? I think the other one is, depression can look many different forms, right? So depression can look like I can't get up in the morning. I have a hard time getting out of bed. I, just can't function. I am constantly crying. I'm having thoughts of suicide, and I don't know that I want to keep existing. To this constant state of nothing feels okay. I can't find a sense of contentment or joy. Waking up in the morning feeling tired, hating going to work, being stuck at work all day, coming home and jumping on the couch and drowning yourself in Netflix or your phone until it's time to go to bed, using food to overeat or to cope, using alcohol, drugs. I would say for some people, even though they might think these are healthy coping skills, maybe not. Going to the gym for 2 3 hours, right, and trying to think that that's sort of the way to get past some of this. So it looks like many different forms, and I think sometimes if we just can acknowledge something feels off, I'm not sure what it is, and that's okay, but it would probably benefit me to just take a look at this, right, and just maybe talk with somebody and see, what's this lack of joy that I'm feeling in my life.
You couldn't be more right. So, Dr. Garcia, when did you first decide that a career relating to mental health was going to be the right career for you? Describe that moment for us.
Yeah, I get asked that question a lot, and I want to say a cool story of like, there was this moment of like insight where I was like inspired to. I think it was a lot of different things. Just looking at some of my previous careers, you can tell that I've always been about helping people and being there for other people and finding a way to change people's lives. The I think the thing was again reflecting on sort of my own journey of growth and personal development and therapy, and realizing, wow, I have been able to shift so many aspects of my life and really find that I've gotten more aligned with who I truly, truly want to be, the person I want to be for myself and for others. And I left the fire department with the goal of becoming a life coach, right, and motivational speaker, right. I would always drown myself in, Tony Robbins, Jack Canfield, all that stuff. and I went to a very clinically based doctorate program, and I started doing the therapy and I was like, whoa, wait a second, this, God, I have so much experience and knowledge in this area, and there was something that felt so amazing, Vincent, about sitting in a room and just being with someone in their pain and in their suffering and helping them hold that. Um, and through that process, then allowing them to get into a space where they're ready to shift some things in their life. And I would say, if I did boil it down to one specific moment, it was sort of one of the first clients I ever worked with as a young therapist in training, and just seeing this moment of the aha moment for them, where it's like, oh, now I understand where my suffering comes from. I understand that I've been holding on to a lot of misguided beliefs, and wow, I can do something about it now. And that feeling, sitting with them, and that feeling of feeling empowered, feeling hopeful, feeling happy, I get emotional just even talking about it, right? And I want to get all my clients there. That's why I became so damn passionate about this, because again, just helping someone on that journey it's my reward. I think it's what I was put on this earth to do, and it's I don't think I have words to describe it.
Well, I love it. I commend it. I think you're doing a great service, and you're trying to help people with these transitions. What advice can you give to our listeners? What maybe considers a potential early sign to, not get down the wrong path when it comes to developing a mental illness, where they want to transition the right way? What are some things where they might be noticing?
Yeah, I think first and foremost is sort of that lack of joy or contentment, right? Not so much happiness. I mean, everyone defines that differently. The sort of thing where we're chasing the happiness, if you will, right? We're setting all these goals for ourselves. We have all of these expectations for how we're supposed to be successful or achieve. And yet, when we attain those goals, we disregard it, we minimize it. We'll say something like, I should have been here way before, or already focused on the next goal, or looking around us and saying, yeah, but this person is here, and why am I not? And sort of that knocking out of our own joy, right? It's like we're chasing something that's so elusive and isn't there. When that becomes repetitive, there's something going on, right? I think another thing is, the social isolation and just disconnecting from people, not wanting to be around other people, feeling like that takes way too much energy and it's just too tiring. When everything in life, even the simple things, start to feel very tiring and exhausting, probably something is going on. And this actually happened with a client that I was seeing this week, where he's reading all the books, he's listening to all the podcasts, he's watching all the YouTube videos, everything about positivity, and he still feels this internal sense of, I just don't feel worth it to people. I don't feel worth it to myself. That's the biggest indicator. That left unspoken about, left sort of unseen, is what I believe leads to depression and anxiety, right? The I'm going to keep sort of just bullying through this, and I'm just going to keep coping, and I'm going to keep this to myself. Listen, none of us is Superman, Superwoman. It's going to catch up, and it's going to start bleeding out into other areas of your life, and you're going to find yourself in this sort of desperation moment.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. For the people that are now battling mental difficulties, if you could only pick three, and just three, because I want the three most important things our listeners can start to do right now on a short-term or daily basis, what can we do to start improving our mental health, Doc?
The first thing I would say is be kind to yourself, right? We are so damn good at beating ourselves up, of setting these high sort of expectations on ourselves, and just judging the hell out of ourselves for everything we do, right? The inner critic takes over, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And sort of what I tell, a lot of my clients is, when I shift the focus outside of them. So, if you had a friend or family member that was dealing with some of the things that you're dealing with or feeling some of the things that you're feeling, what would you say to them? And almost always it's something like nothing. I would just be there to support them and tell them like, you can get through this. I know you're a strong person. And then I just give them that weird look and they're like, oh, yeah, no, I got you. Right. But it's hard. It's hard to give ourselves compassion. It's not because we're not compassionate people, because we're so willing and ready to give it to others. And so I'm saying, like, when you're struggling, be okay with the fact, like, hey, I'm in a shitty place. Life doesn't feel good for me right now. I feel alone. I feel tired. And that's the space I'm in right now. And, let me honor who I am, that I'm a human being and that I struggle like every single other person on this planet. Because when we start to be hard on ourselves, it's like kicking ourselves when we're down, right? And why would we do that to anybody? I'd say the second thing, and I'm a huge proponent of this. We're afraid of our emotions.
Yeah.
I absolutely understand how painful it feels to hurt, to allow pain to come up, to even think about the things that feel painful or traumatic for us. But I believe a lot of our suffering comes in either avoiding that, repressing that, running away from that, when what I have seen over and over is if you just let yourself experience those emotions or sit with them, it's like the weight of the world comes off of your shoulders.
I like that one.
Right? Like, who hasn't felt amazing after a good cry, right? One of those sobs where you just really fall apart, right? We feel better because we're trying to lock that stuff up. And that causes a lot of mental and sort of emotional energy. That's why we're tired all the time, right? And so just allowing yourself to be in that, right? And some people I'll encourage, like, that's my prescription for people. Go listen to some sad music, go read some sad poetry, a sad book, go watch a sad movie, and don't hold back, right? Let yourself feel that. I'd probably say that the third thing is not just going to therapy, but focusing on yourself. Stop. We're so good at putting other people first, right? And for some people, that's a coping mechanism. It's sort of like how I avoid my own stuff is by being there for others, and fine, that's great. But take a little time for the inward focus. If you're not feeling like you're in a good place, acknowledge that to yourself and say, what do I want to do different? How do I want to really take care of myself? If you really hold so much value in being there for others, imagine the way that you can be there for others. Imagine the value you can bring to other people's lives when you're in a clear, like emotionally, psychologically clear place and in a joyous place. That sort of impact.
It's all aligned just within ourselves, right here.
Right. Compassion, man.
I love it. I love it. So now let's look a little deeper. Those are some great short-term initiatives that I know, for one, I'm going to start taking on. Let's talk about some longer-term commitments. What are 2 long-term commitments our listeners can start to do to create a healthier mindset?
Yeah. So, I always feel, I don't know, I have a certain feeling, or like reaction to this, but going to therapy.
Yeah.
I mean, bottom line. And, one of the things I sort of let my clients know right off the bat, or just people in general, is therapy isn't about you're having problems and we need to fix you. Therapy is about self-growth. I imagine most people listening and most people out there are investing in their personal development in other ways. Why wouldn't this be one? My whole focus is to help you see your blind spots. And believe me, we all have them, right? And they get in our way. So therapy, counseling, coaching, whatever you want to call it, obviously find somebody that's qualified. Um, but what a beautiful process to understand yourself and know yourself fully, because that's when the transformation is real,
That's what
right?
you're right about too. You say, why wouldn't this be one of the ways we take care of ourselves? Someone in an earlier episode says, hey, we put so much attention to our teeth with our dental hygiene, yet how many people don't go to therapy or take care of their mental health? And I'm like, wow, you put it like that. And it's like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I would say long term, probably the second thing, and you're really uh, really limiting me here. I don't know. There's so many different things, but um, oh boy, um, I think an exploration of your internal belief system, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Uh, what I call sort of in our field are core beliefs, right? And for the sake of time, I have this very sort of short story, and it's like, you know, most kids grow up with very well-intentioned, loving parents who are trying to teach us a good lesson. Unfortunately, what that message is sometimes is, do better in school, be better at this sport, be better at music, or pushing us to be better. And unfortunately, for a child, sometimes what that sounds like is the only way I can have value or be loved by you is if I'm constantly achieving or doing something, right? So it's no wonder that we grow up and we're perfectionists, or there's this constant struggle for the next goal and yet never feel validated by it, right? And so those are core beliefs, right? And when you sort of sit with your core beliefs and start to question them and go back, you start to realize, like, oh, this comes from some very sort of, a playbook that was handed to me that just doesn't make sense for my life anymore, right? And again, I think therapy is a really great place to do that and for self-discovery.
Yeah, I love the way you put it because at the end of my MBA journey, it was just all about the experience and then what I'm getting out of it because I started to appreciate. Because at first it was just I want that MBA and like you're saying, just the goal. I'm just focusing on the goal. And then I had some great advice from one of my mentors. You have to appreciate the process and the steps along the way because otherwise you're going to get to that goal and be like, all right, so what next? And you're
Yeah,
not going to actually take time to cherish the
yeah.
hard work and dedication that you put in. It's true.
Yeah, it's like you're robbing your own joy.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's you hit it right. You hit it perfectly there, Doctor. What are some ways you plan on raising awareness and for importance of mental health in the future? What are some things we're working on?
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, and again, I really appreciate this opportunity because this is one of the ways, right? Um, one of the things and why I really enjoy getting out there and speaking as well is because, whether I'm speaking to entrepreneurs, whether I'm speaking to, business, any, attorneys, people in the financial sector, whether I'm talking about how to relieve stress, whatever the subject matter is, I talk about some of these core principles. I talk about sort of that internal sense of being broken or feeling not enough. I talk about the core belief issues. I talk about the mental health stigmas. I talk about how we're just sort of really connected as people in humanity, and that we need to get over this idea of suffering is weak. So I try to infuse those principles in every way and almost hide it in a way that feels people can grab onto it, right? So any opportunity that I can find to get in front of an audience, I take that because it's about spreading this message of the love and compassion we should all have for each other, and the absolute power of self-discovery and healing.
You couldn't be more right, and I appreciate all the valuable insights. So thank you so much, Carlos, for coming on. It's my pleasure as well. I'm glad you accepted the opportunity because I love to make a difference with people and just add perspective. I really enjoyed how you started the show right away with relating to people, and I love when people come on here and just break it down, and then we spoke about how it could be that simple. And then I really enjoyed how you explained your background, how you always had a passion for giving back to people, and that's kind of how you really enjoy this role. So thank you for that as well. And it's time for the last word. I do this on my other podcast, What It's Really Like to Be an Entrepreneur too, because I want our listeners to really get to know my guests. Is there something that you would like to share with our listeners that we cannot get to touch on today?
I've been working with this and sitting with this idea of radical empathy, right? And the longer I do this work, the more I understand that we all have that capacity. And even when you run into the most difficult of people, the angriest of people, the people that really can rub you the wrong way, whether at work, in your family, when you start to look at that as, wow, I wonder what you've had to go through in life, that this is the way you've learned to protect yourself. It helps us understand that all of us ultimately are struggling with our own stuff. But at the core of that, God, we just want to be loved and we just want to connect with other people. And allowing myself to disconnect from that and not taking it personal has allowed me to just the amount of love that I have for like humanity, myself, and other people to grow. And I think we all need to get in touch with that part of ourselves.
Absolutely. Can you please describe the ways, social media, website, or ways for our listeners to connect with you, follow your journey, be inspired?
Yeah. Well, I wish it was easier on Facebook, but Carlos Garcia's, you're going to take a while to find me there. So probably the easiest way is on Instagram, and I'm at @life_doc. And you can find me on there. I post a lot of motivational stuff and sort of, a lot of the things that we talked about today. And people can also go to my website, which is www.tampacw, which stands for counseling and wellness.com. And that's sort of my therapy website, but you can reach out to me through there. And, I keep my phone open to anyone. So I'm never, have any issues giving that out, but 813-644-1791. If you ever want to text me, you want to, just reach out to me. You have a question about anything we talked about or anything going on with you, I'm happy to, provide you some support or direct you, in the right way, or, anything I can do. I'm here.
Absolutely. It's a very generous offering. So everybody be sure to take advantage of those opportunities and check out all of his content to improve your mental health and much overall well-being for sure. Check out the show on Instagram and Facebook at A Mental Health Break and on Twitter at Podcasts by Lanci. I'm at Vincent A. Lanci on all social media and YouTube, and my website is vincentalanci.com. Be sure to check out my book, Left for Dead, A Story of Redemption, on Amazon now, but be sure to DM me or email me. I want to hear what you think. If you liked today's episode, please continue listening and rate A Mental Health Break with Vincent A. Lanci 5 stars. I work hard to find value delivering guests for you on each episode. And thanks for listening, and I'll see you all in the next episode of A Mental Health Break with Vincent A. Lanci.